So if I'm in sales, if it's the interest rate, objection, like in real estate, people are saying the interest rate's too high, right?
Yep.
Cool. So it'd be like, hey, Ryan, I totally understand the rate's a little high. However, 6 to 9 months ago, if you were to look at the same property, you would have been in a bidding war with somebody else and probably spent an additional $300,000. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now, you would have had to put an additional $300,000 down when you bought the house because the loan to value would have probably been the same, except for now it's a bidding war. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And you wouldn't want to do that, would you?
Nope.
However, today, there's never been a better time in the history of the world for a consumer like yourself to make a deal on a property like this to buy it right. But the interest rate's a little higher today. Ryan, you date the rate, you marry the payoff. You know what that means? You date the rate, when the feds lower them, you get a better one, you refinance it, abracadabra. But guess what? Had you bought a house 8 months ago, you would have had a higher payoff. Dude, it would have been a $300,000 higher payoff with the little better interest rate. What would have made you more happy, Ryan? Paying $300,000 for the house with a little better of a rate, or having a lower payoff today, but having to pay a little higher rate that you can refinance when the feds drop the rate, which they could do any day now?
Well, what we do know, what actually happened is home values didn't drop 300,000. There was a lot of people that thought they would drop 300,000, but Freddie Mac has shown us that since the 2022 peak, the vast majority of the 380 plus regions that they cover went up in value since the 2022 peak. So to get a $300,000 haircut never happened. And this is why projecting out into the future, especially on these big swings, these big cliffs on pricing, is a real dangerous move for an analyst or an advisor, or certainly for a real estate agent.
Since April, we have uploaded new and sought-after courses, content, and tactical assets for your business into the BAMX platform. Not articles behind a paywall that only pontificate to you what you should think and do, but education that actually shows you how to do what you need in today's market. Every day, we continue to add more content into BAMX and our private Facebook community. Content that works, content that our members have exclusive access to daily. It's why over 1,500 of you and climbing have joined us in BAMX. It's also why tomorrow's price is guaranteed to be higher than today's. That's called inflation. Do not wait any longer. Use code Byron and join the thousands of agents taking their business to the next level today. Code Byron for 10% off. See you in BAMX.
Now, I like this guy. He's got really good sales scripts and sales tactics, and I appreciate all of that. But the first thing he got wrong is home prices and interest rates do not always move together. In fact, 4 out of the last 6 recessions, home values went up, which would seem contrary to belief. We're in a recession, people are hurting, the economy's hurting, yet real estate values, homes appreciated. We certainly have seen that in the last year. As interest rates have gone up, home prices have continued to push up. So the second thing I would change here in this bit of advice is I would actually show where your home's value can go, regardless of what the rate is going to do or even has done. If you can afford the home today, what does long-term real estate appreciation look like? And if we just look at the last 4 decades, real estate has appreciated each and every single decade. Even in the 2000s, real estate appreciated up over 45% after the great financial crisis. If you take the whole decade on itself, and this chart is what I prefer to show buyers who are thinking about what's the value of the house going to be in the future. If you look at the 2000s, real estate went up over 80% for sure. But if you stayed in the whole decade, you still had an over 45% gain. Real estate is a long-term hold option. Most people who live in a home are going to be there anywhere from 10 to 13 years. So you've got to play the game on the decades if you're looking for appreciation, not what's going to happen with the interest rate. And the third thing I would change, if I'm a real estate agent, I would completely remove this from my vocabulary, which is marry the house and date the rate. There's been huge controversy over this. Of course, you can always refinance. Yes, you can. But when will you be able to refinance? Nobody can predict that. Nobody's getting rich off of refinancing on the 30-year fixed on single family homes. This is not a playbook for generating wealth. It's an option that you know you might have available to you. But if you look at everybody in 2022 who thought they were going to refinance in 2023 because they were stretching at 5 or 5.5% on the run up of the mortgage rate, well, in 2023, it hit 8. And while it may get back down to where they originally bought in at 5.5, for them to refi, they've got to go a full point lower than that. They've got to get to at least 4.5% to be able to refi. And we just seem today to be quite a distance from that happening. And so how long are you going to stretch these payments if you were already stretching a year ago at 5.5? Waiting for the rate to save you is a bad plan, and it's also bad advice. Can you afford the home and the property today? And do you understand what long-term appreciation can do for you and your financial security as opposed to renting? That's the conversation that agents should be having and making sure they understand how the home is going to appreciate long term. I do think Andy's a great salesperson, and there's a lot that agents can learn from him. This particular piece of advice, he was just a little bit off. If you learned something from that video and you appreciate the content, please subscribe.